Chainsaw Man, baby, is here. It's here. Yo, finally, Chainsaw Man is here. It's hype. It's good. Everybody, well, most of everybody is loving it. But already we're having some drama, as is always. With any of these types of shows, any of the big shows, they always have to have some kind of controversy about them. Attack on Titan did the same thing. It was everybody's favorite show. They switched studios. You have a little bit of CG. Everybody goes a little wild, right? Anyways, that's what I wanted to talk about today a little bit. Chainsaw Man. Look, it's gonna be good. We're all gonna love it. It's hype. We're all here for it, right? But already the drama is starting up about CG, right? CGI in anime. What can you do? What can you do, right? But there's already some drama coming up around it. People are already kind of shitting on it for existing, primarily. But you know what? Here, we're all about it. So let's get started. At the end of the day, let me just go ahead and get this out the way. The CG in Chainsaw Man is gonna be there to stay. We've seen previously from some of the trailers that they already used it a lot for Denji. Nonetheless, though, Chainsaw Man hype. For me personally, I'm already one of the one of the manga readers, and for me, I'm just gonna say, yo, you're in for a story, right? You're in for some hype stuff, and I can't wait. Who knows how long it'll take to get towards the end of part 1 of the manga, which was like 97 chapters. Who knows how long that'll take for them to get there? Hopefully they take their time on it. We'll see. Let's get into talk about it a little bit. The CG from the show, right? There's already, people are already all over Twitter already kind of shitting on it. And to say my piece on it, by and large, the sentiment is most of the CG was good. Some of it tends to falter within like some of the stills and stuff like that. That's just kind of one of the shortfalls of using CG. Kind of put it an example. Whenever they're going through and using CG in some of these shows, right? You'll use them sometimes for like your action scenes or like background movement. You see this especially a lot in Demon Slayer. And utilized a lot by Ufotable, and even a little bit in the Chainsaw Man opening, where you take your long shots where it's like it really zoomed out. Those are usually done in CG. You can see that in the Chainsaw Man trailer. They use it all the time, and Demon Slayer especially. So you use those shots for CG, and then once you get up close and like whenever you're like getting your headshots, that's whenever you go and hop into kind of like 2D mode. For this first episode of Chainsaw Man, which is the only thing that's out right now, obviously there are a lot bigger fights coming on, so everybody's kind of speculating on like what their priorities and stuff are. This first season, or this first part, is only going to be 12 episodes, so it's not. We'll see what we get to, but they're probably leveraging their chips a little bit in terms of what they're trying to animate, where their time budgeting is going to. But they've already shown a lot in this first episode, and especially utilizing some of the insane animators that they've gotten for this project. I mean, they have brought out the A team, right? they have brought in just amazing talent for this show, especially, and you've already seen lots of that. But these people, I mean, no doubt, like they're getting work to the bone. CG generally, you don't want to use it too much for stills, at least in anime, just because of their time constraints and all that. They don't really have the time to like make it as like fleshed out as it could be, or like they don't have as much time to do like compositing work or stuff like that on it, which is fine. I think especially in this first episode, you saw a lot of really good stuff with CG, with just people kind of pointing out some of the minor parts of it. So in motion in this episode, the CG was amazing. So especially things that stick out to mind is whenever they're going through the fight scene, and he's going through like, especially like the head stab, right? The head stab. It all looks amazing. Whenever he's ripping and tearing, it looks great. I think where people are just kind of like, oh my God, this looks terrible, is whenever you get to some of the stills. And I would kind of like to talk about that just a little bit. Whenever you get to the stills, you lose some of the fluidity that you get with typical CG motion, which is what they get. They actually get to utilize this a lot. So, they get to utilize it where they get a lot more like realistic range of motion. Whereas typically, if you're drawing, you're animating on 2s, you get like a little bit of a choppier motion, but we're kind of used to seeing it because it is 2D animation, which is, just kind of what we're accustomed to. Naturally with CG, choppier movement, it doesn't look quite as good because it's not as intentionally drawn for that frame. And I think with the stills, we kind of lose detail with CG naturally, unless you put like a lot of time into it, which I don't know exactly what the time constraints Obviously, we don't know what the time constraints were for this episode. You tend to lose some of the detail because with 2D, every frame is drawn, with intention, with one specific thing in mind. And, somebody has to look at that individual frame. And so naturally, it's like with 3D, you kind of lose some of that. Naturally, you kind of lose some of that detail with it. So in frames where you kind of really have to sit there and stare at it, or there's like not much movement going on, that 3D model is going to falter a little bit because you just don't have as much detail on it. But I don't think it's too much of a detriment. Could they have drawn some stuff there? Yeah, sure. But it's also not the end of the world. As we kind of come down and like to earth a little bit and touch a little bit of grass, right? It's not a big deal. And usually this kind of stuff, maybe it depends on whether or not it was constraint or artistic intent. And of course, with all shows, you'll never really know, either unless they give like an open interview about it, or you take it to Blu-ray and you see some of the changes that they make in Blu-ray. But nonetheless, that's kind of like my piece on CG. And as far as CGI in the show, the CG in Chainsaw Man, it is good. It's animated very well. I think that maybe the 2D layer of compositing, maybe they could do some more to add some detail to the character and all that. We'll see. I'd imagine just because of how Mappa tends to play things pretty fast and loose, maybe they're still producing some of the episodes. Maybe you'll see changes based on fan input on like the last like 3 episodes, 4 episodes maybe. I don't know. I don't know what their deadlines are looking like. I don't know. You never know. This kind of brings me to Mappa, right? So one of the biggest effector of quality of anime, right, is of course time allocated, right? Time allocated in your animators and the talent that you have. And these are kind of just one of those things where notoriously the anime industry is very bad for. Mappa is no exception. As a matter of fact, they are most certainly not the exception because they do not treat their workers very well, and they're very notorious for it. Especially if you think back to the announcement of the Chainsaw Man anime about a year ago. They couldn't even hide it. Like the animators they brought on stage to go and talk about the show that they were making, they looked more like zombies than the zombies that they animated for this first episode, right? It's not a good look. It's really not. And it's kind of just one of those tragic things of industry where they don't treat their people very well. There are exceptions to that, notably UFO Table, KyoAni. Generally those two, they treat their animators pretty well. Maybe some of the movie studios. Lots of these studios, they notoriously have gone on for like just overwork, overbooking shows. Mappa is especially guilty of that with how many shows they come out in just a season. Okay, look, editor Logan at a later date. I didn't have a good example for it before, but in 2020 alone, Mappa literally came out with 10 shows. That is not good. Like in the same time, I mentioned like KyoAni and UFO Table. They would be lucky if they came out with 1, maybe 2, 3 tops. And that's like pushing it. Like just to illustrate, like they are coming out with a mental amount of shows and they just flat out do not give their people enough time. More shows is not more better. That's not how that works. It does not mean it's better. So just kind of keep that in mind whenever you kind of look at some of these charts and how many shows that this fucking studio comes out with. Understand that it's off of the backs of their people. And it's bad deadline management. It's overwork. It's not indicative of, oh, okay, this is just a big studio. They are big. That is true. But they're not that big. Like, it's not enough to kind of do all this without shoestringing along certain teams or crippling, some of your staff. So just that's that piece on that. Back to the old Logan. Mappa, out of all the anime studios, like they're pushing the top for how many shows that they are just absolutely shitting out every single season, and they're opening up new studios instead of paying and treating their people better, or trying to negotiate better budgets and deadlines for their shows. Right? To put it into perspective too, like with One Punch Man season 2, right? One of the reasons that show turned out so bad, they were put on such an insane schedule for that show. Like nobody would accept it. Nobody would accept the time constraints and the just insane deadline Sorry, editor Logan here again. To sort of illustrate this example a little bit better, I actually wanted to show a snippet from a video breaking it down by Forgotten Relics, where he goes on to talk about an interview with some of the producers where they actually stated, hey, we had 6 months to make 12 episodes.
Tried reaching out to staff that actually worked on season 2, and it was very much confirmed this was the case. And when digging further, it seems they had 6 months to produce 12 episodes. For comparison, the standard length behind an average anime episode is 2 to 3 months. That's 80% less time. 80%.
Regardless of what you think about JC staff and all that, JC staff, they can do good stuff. They have done good stuff in the past, specifically with like Railgun or some of their other shows as well. Like given, whenever they have the time to shine, they can shine. Getting put on these kind of crazy schedules, like you have to cut so many corners, and like it's amazing that they even made a cohesive show in the end, right? But Mappa, they kind of do the same thing, right? Attack on Titan, I don't think that show had a good schedule for it. I believe that it might have been in the interview with Studio Trigger on the production of Little Witch Academia. Most anime studios, instead of taking money that they make from one of these big hit shows, especially in Mappa's case, it'd be like your Jujutsu Kaisen, your Attack on Titan, your Chainsaw Man, or some of the other big shows that they've had in the past. You get these big shows, you make a lot of money, but some of these studios, instead of funneling that money back into their staff and their animators and, giving them reasonable pay, time off, just worker benefits and stuff like that, they usually go and they put it into more shows. So they can keep producing shows, keep hiring more animators, keep doing the same thing that they're doing, kind of maintaining the status quo. And, it's one of those things where it comes down to management, right? It's a management decision, treat your people better, right? It's a management decision to decide whether or not you want to pay your people more and go above the industry standard to treat them well and make sure that they have the time and the resources to go and do good work. And that's one of those things where Mappa is certainly not the company for that. Mappa has entirely survived off of the talent that they have, the talent that they can amass and the directors that they can get to say yes to shows. And I think a lot of that comes down to the shows that they do get. They negotiate for good shows. And with those good shows, naturally you have fans of it that are animators. And that's one of the reason why Chainsaw Man has such a stacked staff. Some stacked staff that you haven't even seen since like One Punch Man season 1, where they had, of course, some Madhouse staff, but then they had like lots of Bone staff, lots of freelancers, and just like top tier talent of industry that all just kind of like came together because they really liked the freedom of doing whatever they could. A lot of that also relates to Space Dandy with Shinichiro Watanabe and all the people that he could attract as well, and some of the directors that they could attract because they were promised, hey, absolute freedom on what they could do, no constraints, no holdbacks. And that's the reason you get some of these really cool, like top tier animated shows, just because the people that attract talent, your directors, your producers, they have the ability to draw talent to them. And Mappa is kind of like flown by the seat of its pants just on being able to attract new directors and being able to attract talent. But they still don't treat their people well, right? Mappa as a studio, they do not treat their people well. And that's just kind of one of those sad things to see of industry, right? So with all that in mind, come down to earth a little bit. Whether or not you do or don't like Chainsaw Man, that's fine. Just have a little bit of empathy and kind of understand some of the context these shows are made in. Obviously these kind of things are kind of out of our control as fans, but it's important to, be able to support the people who do good work, right? And it's, if you're willing to criticize, at least take the time to understand the conditions that some of these people are put in. And with all that being said, let's just say, look, Chainsaw Man, it's going to be awesome regardless. We're all going to love it. It's going to be a good time. If you don't like the animation, go read the manga. The manga is excellent. It's wonderfully drawn. It's crazy. It's artistic. It's dark. It's horrific. And it leans more and more into that as the story goes on. And so it's one of my favorite series. It's wonderful, and look, no doubt it's gonna be a killer show, and just kind of keep that in mind, right? Also, if you want to go and see some more behind the scenes and have someone talk about animation and staff much more eloquently than I can. Go look at Forgotten Relics, or go and look at the Canapa Effect on YouTube, right? They do excellent breakdowns of animation and stuff like that as well, and they go into infinitely more depth and more nerdy stuff than I do or could. And with that being said, if you stuck around to the end, thank you. Not many videos on this channel, but we'll come out with stuff here and there. We'll see how it goes. Thank you. Bye.